All right, so we're not gonna have fun with this one. We're not gonna have fun with this one. It is what it is, but can't have fun all the time. I wrote a script for this. I'm looking right at it, but it feels inadequate. It feels like something that's gonna require a longer follow-up video, but it also feels like something I've talked about so many times. It's just frustrating, but here we are. So everybody knows that Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race and that Kamala Harris took his place. And we've seen a very surprising shift in attitudes toward electoral politics from a lot of online left-leaning, starting at just general liberals, going further left attitudes since Kamala came to the forefront. And that's created an interesting and concerning and very volatile conversation around what leftists should be doing in this American election. If you ask me, the gap between what to expect in a Kamala Harris presidency and what to expect in a Joe Biden presidency is not all that big. And if you were resigned to not voting for Joe Biden on the basis of certain principles, history tells us you probably should feel the same way about Kamala Harris. However, Kamala is not Joe Biden. In 2020, she ran left of Joe Biden on pretty much every issue. And if we take into account her time as a senator, she'd overall have one of the most progressive records for an incoming president in American history. Now, let's be clear, the bar is in hell. We're not talking about anything radical, world changing, or even status quo changing from her record, but she at least seems to be flashing signs that she might be amenable to being pressured from the left, which Biden showed himself to be pretty much immune to. So for those of you who feel like the removal of Biden from the top of the ticket is something to respond to, like, that is a reasonable way to look at things. That said, these two demonstrably true statements of non-committal that I just gave will be enough to get certain people very mad in the comment section at me. It's just the nature of online political discourse, especially right now, as so many of us are far too invested in what voting means here in the States. It is a dumpster fire right now. To be specific, I'm speaking to the real significant animosity toward black liberals who have gotten energized by the sudden emergence of Kamala Harris and the corresponding criticism from white leftists and now folks from the Middle East who see this as a portrayal of various causes. And the CIA and just counterintelligence, counterinsurgents forces, they have got us cooked right now. We are down bad. So I want to be clear, while I tend to agree with the overt leftists in this conversation, it's also very true that you're not about to talk to black folks any type of way online and think that that's going to go over well. I've noticed how many black folks my age and younger have gotten charged up for Kamala Harris. It's starting to remind me of Obama in 2008, which is wild because this is not how we were feeling about Kamala in 2020, or to be honest, the last 4 years. The fact that she's been able to suddenly emerge as this superstar for the Democratic Party and admittedly has been running an effective campaign, it is mind blowing. It's kind of scary because Kamala Harris was the first person to quit the campaign in 2020, but somehow she's effectively running the exact same playbook that Obama did in 08 and is working as if we don't know what Obama was by 2016. And this is not good. It's not good for a lot of reasons that I don't want to get into on the B-sides video, but the reality is the not goodness of it is going to be very hard to explain to liberals and black liberals alike, period. Especially, and let's be honest, if you are not having real conversations with black people and have not been doing that at any point in time up until this point. As a person who was a hardcore Obama fan in 2008, I can tell you there was nothing you could have told me in that moment that would have changed my mind about Obama at that time. At best, you'd have been ignored. At worst, you'd have been cursed out, which is, I think, what's happening to a lot of white leftists online. But beyond the white leftists, who I'll get back to in a second, this is also happening between black folks, black liberals in America, along with some black folks in places like the Congo and Middle Eastern folks in Palestine, Lebanon, that have been perpetual but invisible victims of American imperialism for generations, places that Obama himself bombed and drone struck relentlessly while he was president. From a purely political standpoint, I stand with the victims of American imperialism and have no real allegiance to America's behavior overseas. And although I completely recognize that a Trump presidency will be worse for everyone, I also completely understand the fear and frustration that some folks outside of the US have at seeing us start stan accounts for a presidential candidate who we can rest assured will only continue the American imperialistic agenda. And much like Obama, will be able to hide these atrocities behind Black excellence and Black success and Black faces in high places and a lot of things that will get Black liberals charged up to defend when it's really indefensible. When you're hearing some of these folks in the Middle East talk about how Black people have a role in colonization, they're not wrong. That's what they're talking about. But from the perspective of a lot of Black folks, liberal and otherwise, this really feels out of pocket and extra aggressive, which it has been. Because on the flip side, it's always us and our image that is constantly evoked and used to push left-leaning agendas of all sorts, both here in America, but worldwide. And most times this can look amazing. It looks like these global moments of solidarity where we can rejoice in the fact that other people in the world are standing with us. But in other times, it looks like white girls painting themselves Black for poorly thought out art pieces. History has taught Black people in America, from any political standpoint, that at the end of the day, we will probably be on our own and cannot count on anyone but each other. And even then, I mean, if you look at like the Black Lives Matter organization and what that did, you can't even count on Black folks sometimes. And that's really frustrating because it's a reminder of how virulent and ever-present anti-Blackness is and how it comes out so quickly and reflexively. As soon as any given person that considers himself an ally has a problem with something a Black person said or did, the anti-Blackness is just like, it's like Tourette's syndrome. Like it just comes right out. And it makes you feel like none of these people are actually allies, even when they are acting in a allyship role, because why is that so easy for you to fall back into? Coming back to the CIA role in this, why are Black folks getting the attention for the newfound support for Kamala Harris? We are not the driving force behind American politics. We are 13% of the population, maybe 5% of the electorate. Like the fact that Black people and Congolese people and Palestinian people are fighting each other online right now is the most ass backwards and heartbreaking thing I've seen online in a while. And it shows the flaws in the medium of social media as a tool for seeking liberation or even just educating on certain topics. But it's not just the medium, like it's us, it's y'all. Like the way y'all act and think when it comes to these platforms, it don't work. It's not working, and something needs to change. I've said in so many videos that these platforms are designed explicitly to minimize informed and useful discourse and maximize hot takes and abrasiveness. A lot of good education and communication is possible, but it constantly has to fight for space with the most ridiculous and misguided messages ever. The type of nuance and care and insight that this conversation needs, it's not going to happen in a 60-second TikTok video, or even a, hour-long YouTube video is only going to scratch the surface. And don't get me started on fucking Twitter. Like, when I think about the dude, Nacho Supremo, I don't know this dude's name. You know who I'm talking about. That's getting drugged. He was probably the first person of a significant size to get drugged for his response to Kamala Harris.
You're not voting for the cop. You need to vote for the cop, because it's the cop's turn to be president.
I imagine that had he not been content brained, that he'd have responded differently up front, and then when he was brought to the table to say, hey, this wasn't cool. I think in a situation where people get a chance to have actual conversations that don't have to be consumed through this medium, people tend to come off way better. But when you have to have pithy, like soundbite content that also somehow is supposed to speak to these complex and big brain political ideologies, you have to squeeze and flatten them into, fucking Burger King sandwiches. Like and then we respond to these flattened, commodified, optimized for content consumption, like, share, and subscribe messages around these politics as if it's the real message, as if it's the massive text that the messaging was developed from, or the years-long study and like organizing work and community work that all this stuff really is supposed to lead to. We make it just this, and this doesn't do much of anything except for create the environment for what's happening right now. And because the hot take version of these politics is what it's shared is what builds platforms. People are incentivized to behave in the most non-productive ways. And we got to stop. We got to stop. I really want folks to just step away from the keyboard and go to your own tangible communities, IRL if possible, but online in smaller pockets if necessary, and focus on work and education and communication that can be done there. Because this situation happening right now has PSYOP written all over it. And part of me feels this because unironically, this again all started with white leftists, as these things tend to do. And that's a bugaboo that I've had forever, because it feels like so many white leftists barely know how to effectively communicate with each other in like useful and effective ways. And I don't know what in the world made them think that some of these statements and videos were going to go over well with black people, especially black liberals, like who we have to do work to communicate with effectively. Like, oh, way back in the Ally video, my homegirl, Dr. Candace Hargins, made a comment about, like, do you want to have progress or do you want to be correct? You know what I'm saying? Like, folks are really caught up on being technically correct as opposed to building coalition and community and coming up with strong responses to conflicts and issues. Folks are more interested in style points and pithy comebacks and aren't considering how they sound and come off and whether or not they've actually done anything to help the situation. We live in an online world where everyone is trying to have a monologue written by Aaron Sorkin. If you don't know who Aaron Sorkin is, he's a TV writer who's written some great films and TV shows over the years, like Social Network and A Few Good Men. And he's really, really good at something that I think has like brainwormed so many people on the left. The grandstanding, put them in their place, owned by facts and logic monologue moment. You know, that's why so many of these videos are such and such destroys conservative over abortion bill. Like that term, that word, destroy, that's an Aaron Sorkin thing.
No, I'm going to hold you to an answer on that. What makes America the greatest country in the world? What about the people? Why is America
not the greatest country in the world, Professor? That's my answer.
Let's talk about...
Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of our paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. Sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is, there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number...
Like, specifically, not definitely him, right? Because I think that's just the nature of some of these conversations. But the goal of having your Aaron Sorkin moment has made people stop being empathetic and effective and clear and concise with the issues and things we're trying to communicate. And we don't know how to talk to each other, but we do know what it feels like to get a standing ovation for having the best, strongest, most conservative, destroyed, got wrecked comeback that you can muster. Moments like that make for excellent TV, and they're cathartic. When an issue or topic is bothering you and someone who you see as intelligent and witty and well-learned can like nail the issue and nail exactly what you're feeling, that's cathartic. You want to hear someone you trust break something like that down. I get it. I'm good at this job for a reason. But you forget, people are forgetting that after you finish clapping at the awesome way that I or some other talking head broke down the issue is still there. And it's quite possible that what I said or someone else said hasn't brought us any closer to addressing that issue, especially if I spend more time being glib than being an effective communicator. I've said so many times, and I'll say it again, the forces behind these mediums do not care about anything but engagement. And if you do not resist the urge to engage and share rage bait, you are doing harm. You're doing harm. You're making things worse, possibly spreading that, in fact. The concept of leftist infighting is somewhat silly and it's a meme because we should always be like having conversations that'll sometimes lead to conflict. I get where we disagree. And I know more than a few leftists that I wouldn't trust to do much of anything in any situation in my personal or like community life space. But I've learned that making content around that is just as bad. And so like, here's the final nugget, maybe something to help folks recognize the difference between conflict and disagreement versus like world defining battles that some find themselves in online. Listen closer to this. Being a leftist is not a marginalized identity. It is not who you are. It's what you believe, it's what you're trying to bring to the world, but that is not you. When people say I'm a leftist, it shouldn't be describing the whole of your personality and like humanity. And for some of y'all who I see as the biggest perpetrators of some of these problems, being a leftist doesn't make you stop being white. The aggrieved energy that some of y'all move with is within this space, and the way y'all operate, the way y'all talk to people, the defensiveness when you're called out or even called in, the absence of just self-awareness and critical thinking, and the things y'all say to motherfuckers in the comment section. Y'all need to chill the fuck out and shut the fuck up. It's not good. It's stop. Let me and other people who are connected to this black liberal space handle that. You all do not, unless you know them folks for real, unless you're going to have a conversation for real, you might want to avoid making content about it or expect to just throw oil on the fire. What I'm trying to get at is that some of y'all argue and respond to disagreement and criticism with the same level of tact and decorum as like the Barbs or like NBA Twitter. No. Oh my goodness, Valentine. Or weebs arguing about anime. And this shit's way deeper than that. And I just need people to have more self-control so that we don't have black liberals and Palestinians being the face of this conflict for a week. That is a tragedy. Black youth are dying in the streets. Black women are dying during childbirth. Americans everywhere cannot afford housing, healthcare. Trans kids are dying through stigma and marginalization. Congolese children are dying from pestilence and having to be ousted from their homes. And Palestinian children are being bombed as I speak. And there is nothing you can immediately do to stop any of those things from happening. Most of you, there's not anything you could do right now when this video is over. And any work you actually do, which you should, will only produce results in maybe weeks, more likely months, or even years. That's the reality of how deep the problems are. And I get it that you can get a feeling of catharsis by leaving a mean comment or a response video on someone's TikTok. And as good as that might make you feel in the moment, it really only makes things worse. Very few things change from that type of interaction. It's just harmful in the end. And that goes for everyone involved, whether I mostly agree with you or not. We have to have more discipline and focus on these platforms when it comes to serious shit, because otherwise, from my perspective, this is all my opinion, this shit is a waste of time. You're better off, for those left-leaning people, just making content about anime or something, because the politics are getting perverted through these mediums. Today's video is sponsored by Ground News. I promise you they sponsored this video over a month ago. It just so happened that the topics coincided. I got to make sure y'all understand that today's sponsor is Ground News. So as I said in this video, one of the biggest problems of online discourse is disinformation, and not just this info in terms of whether or not something is accurate or isn't accurate, but also the problem of lacking real insight and knowledge into how information or disinformation is shared and produced in the first place. Even when you can manage to get in a good faith conversation around these issues, it can still turn into a shit show because you or the person you're speaking to might be speaking from a place of ignorance and not even know it. This is because our media landscape is, as I spoke to in this video, designed to create engagement, often through outrage and misleading coverage for the sake of increasing clicks and shares, but not for actually making sure that you're informed on the most important topics. Ground News was created to fight that problem, and it's well equipped to do so. Ground News is a news aggregate site that brings you all the most important news from across the web to one place, and then goes the extra step by giving you all the details you need to cut through any misinfo and bias within those stories. It does this by going that extra step of evaluating every news source, where it originates from, the companies that own the news media source, the factuality of it, the political bias, and even who's reading it. For example, there's a feature in Ground News called Blind Spot, where they specifically present stories that are being underreported to either left or right-leaning audiences. So here's this story on the persistent pro-Palestinian protesters at Harris's rallies. You might be surprised to see that this story is mostly being shown to more right-wing readers, as only 13% of his readership is left-leaning, according to Ground News' built-in bias tracker, which tells you what the news sources are reporting and where they're reporting at. Places like Breitbart, Fox News, and the New York Post are running this story, but more left-wing places aren't, partially because they know that this is a significant issue that the Democrats are not in line with their constituents with, even their more moderate ones. Now, of course, if you're locked in with further left-leaning news, you're aware of this, but it's likely that those moderates don't know this, and they wouldn't know if something like Ground News didn't come along to show it to them. So all of that extra info is the contextual information that Ground News provides to you. It's built to make sure you're not just going off algorithms and customized feeds that aren't designed to keep you informed. Ground News provides all the tools you need to be informed, and I work with them because I truly think this is useful. And because of that, I can offer you 40% off their Vantage subscription, which gives you unlimited access to all their amazing features by going to groundnews.com/Signify B-Sides or just clicking the link in the description. So subscribe today to help support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Ground News for sponsoring the video. I'm FD Signifier, and this has been Light Work.